In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about 7th chords, specifically major 7ths, minor 7th chords, and dominant 7th chords. This is kind of what we need to start with to move even further in our music theory knowledge, where we start getting into half diminished, fully diminished, and other chord extensions that add a lot of color, like 9 chords, flat 9s, sharp 9s, 9/13s. All sorts of different things can be built off this. But to start, we need to really make sure we understand how 7th chords work. So we're going to not only learn about how to make these and build these, but we're going to learn these chord voicings where we can play the root in the bass, the 3rd in the bass, the 5th in the bass, or the 7th in the bass. And it's going to give us all kinds of options in our playing. We'll also do that with minor 7 chords and dominant 7 chords. Root, 3rd in the bass, 5th in the bass, 7th in the bass. And this is going to get us all sorts of options if we learn it well enough to really incorporate it into our playing and get it into our muscle memory. So first, in this next tutorial, we're going to get our fingers on some things and talk about the concept and really understanding what goes into a major, minor, and dominant 7th chord. And then after that, we're going to work on this exercise. It's really a song. We have a backing track for you. And I had this drilled into me back in the day, and the goal behind this exercise is just to get these shapes and all the inversions really into our muscle memory and under our fingers so we can pull them out at any time, because they're actually very useful out there in the real world when we're making music with people. So we've got the jam along, we've got the backing track, and we've got these tutorials that will hopefully help you get you where you need to be with 7th chords. As we're talking through this, you're going to want to be looking at the sheet music documentation that we have at 6stringcountry.com. So just head to 6stringcountry.com, pull them up. We've got chord diagrams, detailed notes, tabs that will help. What I'd like to talk about first is a major 7th chord. So we all know what a G chord is, right? Here's a G chord. A G chord is made up of 3 notes. We have root, major 3rd, and 5th. G's, B's, and D's. And how can we find those notes? Well, if we go to the G scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and we take the 1st, 3rd, and 5th, that's how we know the notes, G's, B's, and D's. And sure enough, in a G chord, we have all G's, B's, and D's. G, B, D, G, D, G. All one of those 3 notes, G's, B's, and D's. And when we start talking about chord extensions, we're adding notes to that. So it's no longer just those 3 notes. We're going to start with those 3 notes, but then we're going to add notes. And once we get more advanced, it can imply things like sometimes with certain extensions, you want to leave one of those notes out on purpose. But with these major 7th chords, that's not necessary. We're going to add in a 7th. So that'd be a way to play a G major 7. You could play it like this. You could play it like this, like this. Lots of ways to play a major 7 chord on the guitar neck. But let's first just talk about how to figure that out, okay? So if we want to play G major 7, we're adding in this note. Well, if we know our fretboard, we know that's an F sharp. So how did we get there? Well, when we're talking about chord extensions, it always relates back to the root. So it's the big letter that everything comes after. Okay, so in this case, it's a G. We've got a G major 7. That can be written a lot of different ways. A major 7 can be written as a triangle. It can actually say MAG7. We've got some symbols on the documentation that you can look out for. But once we know that, we're going to relate that back to the big letter in front to the left of it, the G. Okay, so it's all based on this G. And a major 7th is going to add in the note that is a major 7th above a G, which happens to be 11 half steps, which, let's count them. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Where does that get us? That is an F sharp note. Or another way to do it is just, we're in the key of G here. We're going to count up the scale, 7, okay? Because we know we're in the key of G. We're playing a G chord. I'm going to make it a G major 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the 7th, the major 7th. Okay, a minor 7th is 10 half steps, so a minor 7th would be this. But we're not looking for that. We're going to get to that in a minute. It's a major 7th, that's 11 half steps, or you know, in the key of G, if we just follow the scale, we get right there. And there's our major 7th. So now, it doesn't matter, you don't have to add it in there. You could add it in here. And that's what we do when we play this version of a G major 7. All we're doing is we're making, if it says major 7, that's an important note, and we want to get that F sharp into the chord. And then, we're going to talk about inversions in a minute, but there's a lot of different ways we can go up and down the neck and play. What I like about this chord voicing with the bass note being on the slow E string and then D, G, and B is we've got exactly one note of each in each of these inversions. There's one G, one F sharp, one B, and one D. Those are the 4 notes of a G major 7, right? Because we have the G triad, and then we're adding in that F sharp, and we're playing them exactly one time, all the way up and down the neck, with lots of options for inversions there. So that's what we're going to be learning for this exercise. But in a nutshell, that is how we come up with the concept of these chord extensions and creating an F major 7. Let's look, I'm sorry, a G major 7. So now let's look at the second chord in the key of G, an A minor. So in G, we have G, A minor, B minor, C, D, E minor, F sharp diminished, and G. So the next chord is an A minor. What if we wanted to make that a 7 chord and stay in the key? Well, we could start on an A note, but remember, when we're talking about the extension, we're always going off the root note. But we're talking about the key of G. We're going to stay in the key of G scale, okay? And we're going to make, if we want to find out what kind of chord we're going to make for an A, we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, C, E. It's a minor third, making an A minor chord. And then we have, you know, an A minor, which is the second chord in the key of G. If we wanted to make it an A minor 7, we could keep going. The A is the root note. We're going to keep going on this G diatonic scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then there's the root again. There's the A. That 7th note is a G. So if we wanted to make an A minor 7, we need to add a G into the mix. So instead of just playing A's, C's, and E's for an A minor, like you do here, this is all A's, C's, and E's. Now all of a sudden we have to have a G in there to make it the minor 7. So we could just play this open G string. And sure enough, very popular way to play an A minor 7, right there. How we're going to do it for the exercise is these same chord voicings. Let's analyze this. It's just these 4 notes. We have A here, we have a G there, we have a C there, and an E there. That's why it's an A minor 7, because all 4 of those notes are what make up the A minor 7. And again, we can do the inversions, like we're going to talk about later. We can go all the way up and down the fretboard and have a lot of options for playing A minor 7s. Okay, and then we have a dominant 7, okay? In the key of G, when you're talking about diatonic keys, the dominant 7 comes on the 5th chord. So in G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a D chord in the key of G, and that is why, when you're playing in the key of G, a lot of times you hear people go to that D7, right? And why is that? In the key of G, or in any diatonic major key, why is that 5 chord? If we make it a 7 chord, why is it a dominant 7? Let's go back to the scale, just like we did, okay? So we got G major scale. Let's keep going. But with chord extensions, we always base our numbering. If we want a D7, D dominant 7, that's just written as, if you see a letter with just a 7 behind it, it's a dominant 7. We're going to start, this D is our root note, but now we're going to work our way up the G scale and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? And that is a C note. So if we have a D here and we needed to add a C note in, well, that's a D. We've already played a D here, so that's a C right there. We can play it like that. And it's a minor 7th is the interval, right? But we call it a dominant 7 because it's a major chord with a minor 7 interval. It's 10 half steps up. So if we go 1 from the D note here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a C. So it's a minor 7th interval from the D, but we have a major chord. That's what gives it that dominant sound. And that's also simply following the scale. That's why in the key of G, the 5 chord, the D is always going to be a dominant 7. But it's the same in every key. If we're talking about the key of A chords, where we have A, B minor, C sharp minor, D, E, F sharp minor, G sharp diminished, and A, well, that E is then going to be the 5 chord, right? That's going to be the dominant chord. It's always the 5th chord. And why is that? Well, if we're in the key of A, that's an A diatonic scale. Let's start on an E, and let's count. 1, 2, 3, G sharp, 4, 5, B. So we have E, G sharp, B, 6, 7. That's a D note. So we're taking an E chord, adding in a D note, which is the open D string, and there's our dominant 7. So that is the concept behind making the major 7th, the minor 7th, and the dominant 7th. But it works for everything. It gets more complicated because then you keep going up the scale, and you count past 7, you get to 9, 11, 13, and then you can have flat 9s and sharp 9s, flat 13s. You can have all sorts of different kind of combinations there. And there's implications as we go further down the road. But this is step 1. And not only step 1 understanding it, but step 1 being able to play it, because instead of just going, well, it might call for it. You know, it just gives us a lot more options in our toolbox, so to speak, for making things colorful and for playing things a little bit differently, making things interesting. So now that we understand the concept of how we get to these chord extensions, these 7ths, the next tutorial I'm going to walk you through this song exercise that we're going to play along with the backing track, and we're going to talk about inversions and how all of that works. The first thing we'll do is we'll get our fingers on these inversions for the major 7, minor 7, and dominant 7. Then we're going to talk about how this exercise works and changing keys and moving these around anywhere. The first thing you'll notice, of course, is there's no open strings. They're not bar chords per se, but there's no open strings. So we can move them around anywhere, which is great, which is the point of changing keys, because we want to be able to do this not just in G, of course, but everywhere. If we only knew how to play a G major 7 like that, well, we'd be stuck. We wouldn't know how to play an F major 7. But if we know that's a G major 7 in the root position, all we have to do is start on an F. Now we know an F major 7 or a B flat or an E flat, D, C sharp. We know any chord for a major 7 after we know that shape, right? So let's start with the major 7. We already talked about how to find the notes. So we know we need a G, B, D, and F sharp. But not necessarily in that order, okay? Don't get hung up on that. It doesn't have to be in that order. We just need it in there somewhere. And it's a different sound depending on what's in the bass. So if you want to play a root G major 7, the only thing that matters, well, not the only thing that matters, but the most important thing is that you have a G in the bass. So we do have that. We have our F sharp, we have our B, and we have our D. So we have exactly one of each note in the chord, which is what we're doing in this exercise. I keep on saying exercise, but keep in mind this is also a chord that we can use, not just in exercises. This is a great chord to use when we're playing in the real world. Okay, so now if we want to play it with the 3rd in the bass, we just need to make sure we have a B in the bass, and then we need the other notes. We need a G, a D, and an F sharp. So there's our G, there's our D, and there's our F sharp. Right? So we can move from here. And again, these chord diagrams are all on that sheet beneath the video player at 6stringcountry.com. To here. That's move number 1 to work on. Root, 1st inversion. 2nd inversion is when we have the 5th in the bass. So the D note in the bass. So we've got a D note here. Now we've got the D note covered, so we need to find a G, B, and an F sharp. Well, we can make this shape right here. And then here we have our B. Here we have our F sharp, and here we have our G. It's a pretty chord. It's very nice, right? That's a useful way to create a sound if that's what you're going for. Now the 3rd inversion is when the 7th is in the bass. So that's an F sharp in the bass, and then we just need the other notes, the G, B, and D, which we have right here. You recognize this shape, right? But we're not playing that in the bass. We're playing an F sharp in the bass. We've got all the other notes there. And then we're an octave up from that starting position. So in the exercise, you'll see us go. And then walk it back down. Third inversion, second inversion, first inversion. And then we're going to go to a different chord. But all we're doing there is we're kind of keeping a steady motion with our pick. I'm hybrid picking this, so I've got middle finger on the D string, fourth finger on the G string, pinky finger on the B string, and we're just kind of going pick, fingers, pick, moving up the line to first inversion, pick, fingers, pick, second inversion, third inversion, back to first inversion and octave up, third inversion, second inversion, first inversion. Now we're going to do the same thing with the minor inversions. We already talked about the minor with the root and the bass. Now we've got to do the same thing. So an A minor we know is an A note, a C note, and an E note. And to make it a minor 7, we need that minor 7th in there, which is the G note. So let's analyze this. We have A, we have a G note right there, we have a C and an E. So there's our A minor 7. If we wanted it first inversion, what note would have to be in the bass? The third would have to be in the bass. Okay, so that would be a C note. So we have a C note right here. Now we just need to find the other notes. We need an A, an E, and a G. So here we have an A, here we have an E, and here we have a G. So we can go root, first inversion. Just practice that with your fingers. Again, this was drilled into me so much in college. This is just muscle memory. It takes a long time to get there, but it can become muscle memory. And when that happens, then it's very useful. For second inversion, we need a fifth in the bass. So for an A minor chord, what is that? It's an E. So let's find an E right here. Now we just need an A, a C, and a G. So right here we have a C, here we have a G, and here we have an A. So now we have root, first inversion, second inversion. Then we have third inversion, which has the 7th in the bass, which you got a G note right there, and then we're going to make just like your regular A minor shape. We've got our E note, A note, and C note there. And you'll see us hopping around a lot in the exercise because eventually we run out of frets or we get uncomfortable with some of these shapes. So you could always move that one down here. You could go root, first inversion, second inversion, and you could play that third inversion up down here or up here. Okay, and the same exact concept applies for 5/7 chords. That's another way of saying dominant 7. So for a D, if we wanted the D dominant 7 and the key of G, we'd start here because again we have D's, F sharps, A's, and C's. Root, major 3rd, 5th, minor 7th. All right, so that's a D. That's your C, that's your F sharp, and that's your A. To get this in other inversions, first inversion, of course, we're going to need an F sharp in the bass. So we can find an F sharp here. Then the other notes would be D, A, and C, which we can make like this. D, A, C. And then we'd need, for second inversion, an A in the bass. So we can find that here. The other notes being F sharp, C, and D. And then we have the same kind of thing. Think about a D bar chord. Now let's put a C in the bass. And just bar the other ones. We have a C, and then we have your A, D, F sharp. And then you've got all your inversions for 7ths. And as you follow along with the tabs in the chord chart, it's the same set of music there. You see the chords on top. What we're doing is we're doing 2 times through on the one chord. So in G, we're using all G's, A minors, and D's. We're going 2 times through, but we're going up once, then down once. Then hit this and come down. Now we're going to do A minors, just like we talked about, up and down the inversions. Doing 1 time through the minor chord, and then we're doing a 5 chord. So we've got the D's, the Now we're going to skip down and back to a G. Now here, the second time at the end of the progression, we switch it from a major 7 to a G7, a G dominant 7, which is we're kind of going through the circle of fourths here. This is going to set us up to get into the key of C next. So now we're going to come down on a G7. And we're going to come down, so now we're going to use third inversion on the G, second inversion, first inversion. Now your ears are going to love it when we make it to the key of C. Right? Now we're going to do the same thing in the key of C. Root, this is a C major 7. Root, first inversion, because we've got the E in the bass, then second inversion, with the G in the bass is going to be here. And then third inversion with the B in the bass. And then we're back to C, and we're going to work our way back down. So we got C again, the root, back to third inversion, second inversion, first inversion. And it's the exact same thing, guys. Now we're going to go to the minor 2 chord in the key of C. What's that? That's a D minor. We're going to make it a minor 7. Walk up the inversions. That's the first inversion because there's an F in the bass. Now we need an A in the bass for a D minor for second inversion, right? So we're going to find an A here, do the same shape, and then find a C, do the same shape. Now the 5 chord in the key of C is a G, so we need dominant 7s with a root, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion. Now we're back to the C. We're going to go major 7 at first for one time through. Drop it down. Now we're going to go back down with dominant 7. C dominant 7, we need a B flat next. We need the G. We need the E. Now our ears are going to love it when we make it to the key of F. Because that 5-7 chord, we've talked about this before in other theory courses, it just sets your ear up to receive the 1. So if we're a C on a C7, our ears want us to resolve that to an F. So now we're in the key of F, and now we have the exact same thing, guys. And I almost don't even need to go over it, but we'll buzz through it real quick because we're just talking about shapes starting on different fret numbers. So now we've got the key of F. We've got the root. We're going to jump down immediately to find the first inversion, which needs to start on an A. So we've got here, major 7, first inversion. What are we going to do? We're going to do this. Then we've got second inversion. We need a C note in the bass. Third inversion, we need an E note in the bass. Then walk it back down. That's root, third, second, first. Now the 2 chord in the key of F, minor 2 chord, is a G minor. So now we're going to do the same thing for the minors, walk it up, but we're going to start on a G. First inversion, second inversion, third inversion. The 5 chord in the key of F is what? It's a C, so we need dominant 7. We got C, 7, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion, and then we're back to F. The first time through, we're doing major 7, right? And we're going to walk it back down with dominant 7. So now we need an E flat in the bass. We need C in the bass. We need an A in the bass. Now our ears want that B flat. We're just walking through the circle of fourths. Now we're at B flat. We're going to do the exact same thing, guys. So this is what I'm saying with the muscle memory. Once you just get used to these motions, it becomes a lot easier. It's just it's more fun when we kind of put it in the context of a backing track in a song. But that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to start slow. You know, that backing track's at 110. You might need to start it at 60 or 70 and just kind of slowly work up to where you can do this. But do it with a metronome or a track to make sure you're keeping yourself in tempo. That's the key. So here we go. On the B flat, we got B flat, root. Then we've got first inversion, major 7, second inversion, and the third inversion. Back to root. We're going to walk it back down to third inversion, second inversion, first inversion. 2 chord in the key of B flat. What's that? It's a C minor. So we got root, same thing. First inversion, we're going to drop down for the second inversion. Third inversion. The 5 chord in the key of B flat is, it's an F, right? So we're gonna start with the dominant 7, root, F dominant 7, root, first position, second position, inversion, sorry, and third inversion, back to B flat. Go up with the major 7s. We're gonna come back down, dominant 7s. Now we need an A flat in the bass. Second inversion, first inversion, and E flat. And you can go around the entire circle of fourths and do this. My instructor at Belmont, when I was a guitar major, made me do that a lot. Go around the entire circle of fourths and run exercises like this one. And boy, oh boy, you can't get done with something like that and actually do it well without really increasing your fretboard knowledge. Just having a real command over note names and finding things quickly on the fretboard. So it's a worthy exercise and it's hard. So if you guys are struggling with it a little bit, it's good. When we struggle with things like this, you know you're making yourself a better player. So don't be afraid to struggle with it. Take your time with it. Start slow. Make sure you understand the concepts, and you'll be a better player for it. So like I say, start slow. And when you're ready, play along with me with the jam along and then with the backing track.